What's up? Welcome. It's Blacklisted Radio. We're here. It's the 28th day of August 2016. I'm your host, Doug Owen, and it's good to be with you as always. Really excited about the show today. A lot of stuff to talk about. Crazy week. I was just talking with Ken, the producer there. You can talk to him at 800-313-9443. He said, well, nothing's happened since last week. Nothing to talk about. It's got to be pretty boring. And let me tell you, the hard part is figuring out what to talk about for just under an hour. So, you can be part of the show. Go to blacklistedradio.com. That is where we have an interactive chat room. You can find exclusive content. You can hook up with me on social media. My Twitter handle is BLN Radio. It's not just a news feed from Blacklisted News. It's actually thoughts, commentary, sometimes musings, sometimes funny memes. We're going to talk about the alt-right tonight. There's a lot to get into, and it's a new term. And if you haven't heard about the alt-right, you may or may not be part of it. And it's this ever-changing environment where people are being put into categories. And so Hillary Clinton had some really interesting comments for people that are evil, black-hearted, cold, conspiracy theorists, by name Alex Jones. So I definitely want to talk tonight about the alt-right. You can also follow along at our other social media accounts, and you can, of course, text me 24/7, 7 days a week. Some of you have taken the opportunity to do that this week, and it was cool talking with some of you. Our friend in Europe that sent a text message in wasn't able to reply because of the technology. It said the number wasn't a reachable service area for text messages or SMS messages. So, it's not a perfect system, but very cool to hear from a lot of you, and the continuing support for the show has warmed my heart this week. We talked a lot about advertising last week, and so just the model, corporate news, the information that we get and how it's disseminated to us, and of course all of the agendas behind it. So we covered that a lot. Of course, the attack on conspiracy theory has been kind of forefront in the last few shows. We talked about the war on vaccines. This week, a California judge upheld the forced vaccination of children attending school. There's 11 communicable diseases that you must be inoculated for before you can attend. And the ruling basically said that the state's prerogative to protect the student population and the human population, it's within the constitutionality of the California Constitution to take that right. So that opens a whole nother can of worms. I'm not going to talk about it tonight, but that's kind of where that war, that forefront has landed, and we'll see how much blowback there really is. But those people might be on the crazy fringe of the alt-right. I guess we can just start talking about it. It's a term that I just became familiar with probably within the last 2 weeks. And if you haven't heard of the alt-right, it's just a new definition for people that are Trump supporters, and basically the proponents or the media outlets for alt-right views are Drudge Report, Alex Jones, Breitbart News, people like, maybe even Fox News to a certain extent. But this is what I think a lot of people, including myself, initially take as the alternative media right, the alternative to the Republican or establishment that has taken a liking to Donald Trump. So the definition for what it is to be alt-right is pretty interesting. Of course, I had to go to Wikipedia. It is the knowledge of the source of all knowledge, and anything out there that you want to know about, you could find at least I wouldn't say vetted. I would say debated, maybe even persistently controlled narrative. So usually watered down and sometimes, tinted towards the moderator's viewpoint. and most of the people that have a contrary viewpoint to, popular opinion, quote unquote experts, is quickly booted from moderation. But nonetheless, alt-right. The alt-right is a segment of the right-wing ideologies presented as an alternative to mainstream conservatism in the United States, although, Euroscepticism and those especially in Europe that are anti-immigrant, which is another hallmark of what they are calling this alt-right, could probably Eurosceptics, anti-multiculturalist, anti-immigration, pro-state, statist, or nationalist ideologies, of course. They link them to white supremacism, anti-Semitism, right-wing populism, nativism, native county community, or neo-reactionary type movements, which is, the reactionaries are those out there that have, tragedy pimps. It's a left, usually uses the left term for left-leaning kind of war hawk types. The etymology back in 2008, I mean, I've never heard of this, but it seems that Patrick Ford and a guy named Jack Hunter discussed this term, and it became pretty synonymous with white nationalism. The Archie Bunkers and the Joe Sixpacks out there that are white, privileged, angered, do not like Obama, do not like the Republican Party, feel alienated, see jobs vanishing. Sound familiar? Are you wearing that hat, maybe? I'm sure some of you are, but that is the portrait that's being painted by those in the alt-right. So if you're being demonized and being called alt-right or wearing that moniker as a badge of honor, you should know what people are saying, like the Southern Poverty Law Center, ever famous friends of the show. They love Blacklisted Radio. And they are attacking Breitbart News. It's become what they call a popular outlet for alt-right viewpoints. So, of course, the mainline narrative is that you have a bunch of established Republican elites, power brokers, people that are deeply entrenched in the two-party system. They're not big fans of Donald Trump, and the people that support Donald Trump by and large are pretty much apolitical people, meaning not people that have a traditional conservative or Republican versus whatever, maybe, you think about the Democratic Party or any of those party lines or any of those other political ideologies, whatever the hell that means at this point. I don't know what a Republican or what we would call a neoconservative really thinks. Some of them are Trotskyites, some of them are definitely like uber liberals with a polished, political and theological agenda. But nonetheless, those are the type of people that have, I guess, garnered a lot of support for Donald Trump. People that are anti-globalist, anti-New World Order, people that I think see the establishment and see him as an alternative, whether he's really much of an alternative or will be an alternative to what Hillary Clinton has proven herself to be and want to be, which is somebody who is vocally talked about going after conspiracy theorists, people like you and I, people out there that dare bash her name. So I imagine she's not really thrilled with the attacks on not only her health. She had to address those this week. She went on Jimmy Kimmel and proved to all of us that she's perfectly healthy by opening a pickle jar. So I don't know if that compelled you or not to want to vote for Hillary Clinton or whether or not she's healthy. But she actually spoke out. I'm not going to play the audio because there's really no point. But she actually spoke out about Alex Jones. I paraphrase, but she pointed that people like that, Alex Jones, he's a guy that espouses hate and has a dark heart. He talks or she said that he believes that the Oklahoma City bombing and 9/11 were both inside jobs, and that there were crisis actors, children actors that were present and part of the Sandy hoax. And she didn't say it in so many words, but that nobody died there, and that he subscribes to that conspiracy theory, I guess. And whether or not that's true, I don't know. I don't know what Alex Jones's thoughts on Sandy Hook would be, but it's pretty epic if you think about it, that you actually have a presidential candidate who is speaking to the character of Donald Trump because he went on the Alex Jones show, and naming him by name rather than just saying that he's part of the alt-right, which is, I know a lot of you that are real conspiracy theorists like myself probably thinking, wow, that's got to be the best endorsement, the best advertisement for the Alex Jones show that's ever been, that obviously this points to that the possibility that he is part of the establishment, and that is why she is giving him attention, and I subscribe to that a little bit, but I wonder, it seems like a lot of attention that you wouldn't otherwise give to somebody, but maybe, just maybe, those Bill Clinton rape t-shirts or those Hillary for prison 2016 t-shirts are really, really upsetting her. Or she believes that the power of the press, the alternative media, and of course the constant attacks on Hillary Clinton have to be rebuked, that she has to respond. I think being a female, and one of the things that makes her so dangerous is that she is a war hawk. And I think if she became the first president, she would prove to us over and over again that she is tough, and that she would be the continued war criminal that George W. Bush was, and Barack Obama has successfully succeeded. And, going forward, I don't think that there's too many people that Hillary Clinton wouldn't kill to, preserve her legacy. I don't know how many email servers she would burn, or IT people, or lawyers, Vince Foster's, other people that end up dying under odd circumstances. Who knows? Some of that's conjecture, but she doesn't like you questioning her health. She doesn't like the National Enquirer saying that she's going to be dead in 6 months, and she's responded to this all week long. There's been several responses. So, you think about this, and one of the things that has really changed, I guess, in alt media coverage is the Drudge Report. Then now, for the last, I would say, a couple of years, linking to Alex Jones articles. And that was something that was pretty big, because there was definitely these divisions between establishment Republican news websites and, 9/11 truthers, kookiness, and the things that get associated with people like Alex Jones. So, noticing that trend, Breitbart News, and some of those, especially with the assassination, or in my mind, suspicious death of Andrew Breitbart and the people that may now be running Breitbart News, you gotta wonder. It's an interesting consortium of very powerful people in media that are now running these websites. I don't have enough insider info to lob accusations about who may be operating these agencies, but they do seem suspect to me because of this kind of focal point on attacking people that are quote unquote deniers or truthers and the like. So of course the guilt by association that has been a constant from the mainstream media when it comes to Donald Trump and white supremacists, people like David Duke, and trying to make those equations to this anti-Semitic, anti-multicultural, nationalist front, and that those are the people that respond to him. So anyway, I think it's just one more of these tactics to try to definitely minimalize and marginalize people by giving them labels. Oh, you're part of the alt-right media. That's why you hate Angela Merkel. You hate Germany for what they're doing. You hate immigration. You don't like these changes that you're seeing to culture, and you're a xenophobe. That is kind of the equation. Interestingly enough, it really started out of these memes with this like frog thing that loves Donald Trump. That's the origin of a lot of the culture around what they call the alt-right. And if you go to 4chan, if you know what 4chan is, it's kind of like Reddit. It's one of these aggregator kind of social media network type thing. That's where it really started to pick up. It's interesting to see how this has transitioned. And I know we're coming up on a break, but actually this weekend I listened to Webster Tarpley's podcast, and that kind of we're going to bring some of this full circle. But he was somebody that really I think has kind of been ostracized by the 9/11 truth movement, and he talks about that this week. Not that he's been minimalized, but that there was this definite transition. And I think that some of you guys and gals listening who've been listening for 10 years or so may kind of grasp or be part of this group. But he really hit the nail on the head talking about this idea that you had a lot of people that were completely apolitical, non-political affiliated, that resonated with 9/11 truth. And what he saw and what he hoped for was that this would become an true anti-war movement, because seeing 9/11 for what it was, all the inconsistencies, the lies that justified the invasion of Iraq, Afghanistan, all of these things would culminate around 9/11, and that would spur a unified, or at least re-empowered, reinvigorated anti-war movement, and that it transformed from really focusing so much on the incident. It really was fractured because so many people were caught up in technical details of 9/11 rather than looking at the rogue operators in the U.S. government that were directly responsible. And so it broke off and splintered into a lot of ideologies. Of course, you had people debating planes, no planes, holograms, no holograms, directed energy weapons, small miniature nukes, talked about thermite. And so, the 9/11 truth movement became really a kind of a debate club for which facts, which truth, who was behind. Okay, you have this faction that, noticed that, yes, Israel, some Israeli operatives were absolutely aware. They had foreknowledge because of things like In-Q-Tel having the SMS paging system. That there were definitely there was a lot of chatter when you look at the whole issue surrounding the dancing Israelis. Well worth your time. Fox News doing an investigation that came to a quick, immediate brick wall when looking into Israel's role or potential insider knowledge. And of course, those people looked at that and said, well, it's an Israeli inside job, and focused more on the demonization of Israel and focusing on kind of that aspect of it, where it became more technical for architects and engineers. But you see where it kind of went, and he was like, well, it would have been more effective if we would have ousted the people responsible. But it turned into, an after-school chess club. Interesting thoughts, and he takes us right to today with the alt-right media. Your comments, your thoughts are welcome. 800-313-9443. This is Blacklisted Radio. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. Not part of the alt-right, part of the independent analysis, not really a cheerleader for any political party ideology. I try to look at things pretty rationally, and when you have discerning eyes whatsoever, when you're not blinded by propaganda or caught up emotionally and invested in one team or the other, it's pretty clear and easy to see engineered narratives, quick, easy solutions that empower, enrich, and centralize those powers to the very few in this country. Regardless of your political opinion, regardless of your ideology, most of you listen to the show because you agree with that. Corruption is endemic, and so we have to root it out at every turn. And that's the only way that you're going to have a, somewhat functional society. We can talk about philosophy, economic issues, the trillions of dollars that are out there, and we do focus on markets and the perception of them, because they are managed and used economically to not only wage war but to control command economies. So I guess my point is, you don't want to wander off into the woods too often, although this kind of show and the format that I do it in is pretty much a stream of conscience. So anyway, back to the alt-right, the new anti-Semites, the new KKKers, the angry, disfranchised, overindulged white people like you, like me, that cannot get with the times, isolationists. All of these terms are being used, but it's really interesting, some of the control valves that you see for alt-right media and the support for Donald Trump. Something that I think I get kind of bored of reading about. There's so much coverage, especially in the alternative media, which I would consider a lot of being alt-right. So back to Webster Tarpley's breakdown of 9/11, and a lot of the people, including some of you and myself, that were apolitical, that came to 9/11, saw that event, and then saw the obvious problems that the country was facing, and that's where people further split. Some of them, caught up in technical details, wondering about, the controlled demolition of multiple buildings, not to mention the ever-present, an evergreen to the event of 9/11 that just kind of encapsulates all the questions surrounding it, and that is the falling of Building 7. So many of those people that already had political ideologies used that and fell to kind of the left. A huge proportion of those people, though, kind of gravitated towards a more political solution rather than routing out the rogue elements of the deep state that conducted this attack on the U.S. government. In tandem, the 28 pages have proven that the Saudi Arabians were deeply involved in presenting or fomenting, funding these radicals. They may have been doing that at the behest of the Israelis, but it's really the political and Wall Street insiders and people like Dick Cheney, Don Rumsfeld, that were intimately involved in this, the Project for a New American Century, and a lot of these interventionalists that are garnering a lot of power through Hillary Clinton. So a lot of people, though, kind of splintered into this anti-government, I wouldn't say not anti-government, but really a far-right libertarian kind of anarchy viewpoint, looking at just eradicating government itself rather than, maybe addressing 9/11. So I saw a lot of that. You have a lot of these guys that became kind of libertarian heroes, and the libertarian philosophy, not to mention kind of a Christian evangelical element to the 9/11 truth movement, or a lot of people that gravitated to it. And so without political ideologies, without gravitating to, some group, they wandered on and attracted or were attracted to Ron Paul and part of the Ron Paul revolution, which then kind of spurred into more libertarian Mises, Lew Rockwell, anarchy, or different, variations, ANCAP or anarcho-capitalism. That also, many of the Ron Paul supporters, jumped on board with, of course, Rand Paul, who was even less principled. And that sect of people that were transitioning from Ron Paul to Rand Paul are now transitioning to Trump. If you're one of those people that made all those leaps, it's a transition into this political ideology. But he was really, it was interesting to see that, because it's something that I have been talking about, and especially being in the alternative media or being somebody who's politically aware and vocal in alternative media, online news coverage, and having, I would say, a lot of those leanings myself, and kind of being on that same path. I liked Ron Paul. I thought that he was going to hold people accountable, and I thought that if not, that liberty lovers would, understand some of these, principles. It was more principled, but yeah, it's a huge step from, going after rogue operators in the U.S. government, and turned more into kind of an anti-liberal, anti-globalization movement in and of itself. And I think a lot of that you can attribute to Alex Jones. Well, Hillary Clinton does anyway. She is, I don't know, she's making her list and checking it twice, and if it's not completely staged, I would think that I'd be a little worried to be on the Clinton bad side of Hillary Clinton, unless I was an operator working for her, which I would still be pretty scared about that too. But of course, it's the demonization of people that, and not so much what Webster Tarpley said. He was just talking about this transition and how many of those groups became, anti-immigrant, you had a lot of that intersection with the alternative media and people in it, and that people, from 9/11 to Donald Trump. And I thought that was really interesting, because there is a large schism of people that have made that journey politically, from being completely apolitical and not politically aware at all, and then to this point. I just jumped off in the middle. I jumped off halfway in the Ron Paul revolution, because I understood that the quote-unquote Tea Party was being taken over by Dick Armey and Fox and Friends and Sean Hannity, and I saw that transition, and then seeing the transition from Drudge Report to being really traditional establishment to where it started focusing on the economy in 2008, and then kind of jumped ship and started becoming an ally with InfoWars. I thought that was really interesting, but I'd have already jumped off that whole bandwagon before that. And I've talked about this, an activist that he kind of went down that same path, and he ended up more kind of an anarchist, anti-statist. His name's John Bush, and he's living in a van with his family, and they're traveling the world using Bitcoin, and throwing the middle finger up to the man, living that caravan type lifestyle, and living off the grid, on the grid, interacting cryptocurrencies. But anyway, so that's kind of where I see a lot of the Ron Paul movement jumping into that kind of realm. The money geeks, people that sit around and talk about money all the time, and markets, people like Mac, that gravitate towards zero hedge and maybe like Max Kaiser. But anyway, he interviewed Ron Paul. Ron Paul, he said, well, there's all these liberty candidates and other independents and libertarians that opposed NDAA, that opposed all of these the Iraq War, and that the people in the Republican Party that you are telling your constituents to vote for are these very same people that voted to go into Iraq, that are anti-this, that are anti-liberty. And he just brought up a couple examples. And Ron Paul said it straight up. He said, when you're part of a party, you have to do what the party says. That's part of being the party, and that's what the Republican Party demanded of me. So if you want to be part of the party, that's what you have to do. And that moment was It was mind-blowing for me. Anyway, quick break. More on the other side. It's Blacklisted Radio. Run. The alt-right is on the loose, spinning and spewing horrible, evil things about conspiracy theories and Sandy Hook. Run, run, run. Dismiss these people as crazy. Anybody that opposes, the establishment and the establishment viewpoints of Hillary Clinton, people that, are, just being honest about, some of the travesties of social engineering, social conditioning by their governments, especially in Europe. I mean, that's where you're seeing a rise of nationalism, and it's not because of anything that Hitler did that's so inspiring. It's because of all the things that these socialists and central planners have done that has just irked them so much. I mean, case in point, you had Juncker this week. Jean-Claude Juncker, head of the EU, said that one of the worst things, one of the worst tragedies in the world is borders. Now, the free spirit that I am, the anarchist that is in all of us. I mean, at the core, it's really about survival here on planet Earth. People make rules so that we can have societies, but how much do they apply to you in your personal situation, and how much do you believe in them? Anyway, I go back to really, being a sovereign individual, and I think of that on the, that's my baseline. We're looking at political ideologies. When you have people that are more interested in themselves and than some national cause, self-interested people, you become xenophobic. When you get tired of looking at burkinis on your French beaches, the government has to intervene. Big story this week about whether or not, the subplot, the sub-story, real politic is whether or not these photos of bikinis are actually being staged in many cases. The Daily Mail ran an interesting piece about that, but it's a huge debate whether or not people can wear outfits on beaches. And the people there are seeing the culture, they're seeing the population, and really the religious or non-secular aspects of Middle Eastern culture as an attack on the societal norm that they are used to. We used to have these beautiful beaches, Western people exposing their bodies, this whole, idea that Western civilization should flourish, it is the apex of modern day politics and allowing true freedom, true expression, not stoning people for their views, not mutilating their genitals when they're born because of, ancient rituals. And so I have to agree with most of that. I think that, that what we have to offer in the Western world is much better than what other people have to offer. Just, go to most Middle Eastern countries, go to places in the Eastern Bloc, and, you're going to find genocide. You're going to find a lot of, cultural taboos. Africa, some places there anyway, pretty scary. I do contend that when it comes to things that are attributed to the alt-right, I subscribe to some of those. So anyway, there's not a lot more I can really say about it other than the people at the top that lead the path, that are leading the charge, the tip of the spear. I'm just watching this alt-right thing and how it plays out, and then who's being demonized, who's being the useful idiots, who's going to win these media wars. And it's going to be interesting if Hillary Clinton takes office to see if there's retribution, and if there's not, then we have another conspiracy theory, and that is if there's collusion between those in the alt-right and Hillary Clinton's campaign. There's already a lot of conspiracy theories about Trump himself being a Manchurian candidate for Hillary Clinton. All funny, all interesting topics that that make the debate at least fun. rather than and more interesting than it could be, which is it's paper thin. There's no policy being talked about. It's really just two people, two parties attacking each other through social media and blaming the alternative media for pitching an alternative to people that see this quote unquote New World Order system for what it is. Interestingly enough, this story hasn't got a lot of attention, but some of you may have heard about the Cajun Navy. Down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, you have really private citizens doing a hell of a job responding and taking care of their own neighbors and people in their communities better than the U.S. government can, or even the rapid response of SWAT teams, the militarized, U.S. agencies, and FEMA with cash and soldiers in hand. So, we saw this outpouring. You had Donald Trump showing up. Hillary Clinton, of course, Barack Obama did not, but nobody wanted to see them, probably anyway. Great picture. A meme of last week was this Photoshop of Barack Obama playing golf on top of a car that's underwater, kind of epitomizing the sediment. Where's Obama now? Nobody likes poor, black, muddy people. That's why I think you have a lot of tension. We should maybe even get into Colin Kaepernick not standing up for the Pledge of Allegiance, but other stunners, other big topics of the week. When it comes to this group, they actually kind of give themselves a name, and it's called the Cajun Navy, and they were going in on their own boats. People out there that have resources that can get to people that need help are doing that, and the state is not too happy about it. FEMA, not too happy about it. The National Flood Insurance Program, not too happy about it, and you have the federal government and people in it that want to take over the operation, and they want to charge these guys, not only charge them anywhere from $15 to $50, but actually vet them through some government sanctioned licensing system. So, a lot of people are saying, wow, what the F? The government, you can't help your neighbor. And people are rejecting this, of course. Anyway, the Cajun Navy is a group of volunteers that operates at its own expense to rescue people trapped in flooded areas in Louisiana. They use their own boats. They risk their lives. And now people have noticed that they are far more effective than government rescue efforts. There are plans to require them to pay fees before they're allowed to do any good. Don't worry. It's just a small fee. That's, of course, what legislators say. Maybe only $50, whatever. That would be worth it to put authority behind the Cajun Navy. Kind of deputize them. If you don't remember, Google InfraGard. Another case in point of this public-partner relationship, public-private partner relationship, rather, where you have the FBI, FEMA, basically deputizing and giving licenses to kill to people that are rapid responders or that have high duty roles in civilian infrastructure that is in the national interest. So anyway, one of the Cajun Navy members said, no thanks, we're good with what we do. We didn't want the government to train us. Obviously they're not doing a very good job, and we're able to do it just fine. But now they're being treated like criminals. The government deployed police now to prevent good Samaritans from actually helping their own neighbors, for their own good, of course, for safety's sake. And it's actually a crime to cross a police line. You can get in trouble for that. These guys are trying to show that they can that they're empowered. Or not really. They're not trying to show, but it's showing people that individuals can empower themselves. The government doesn't like that kind of competition for being the heroes. So you have now opportunist in government, trying to find his name here. It's one of the Congress critters that wants this. Of course, they're saying, well, give your money to the Red Cross. Don't give it to other organizations. If you're going to be giving any money out there, they're the only good guys, even though we know how much of that goes to overhead and how little of it, gives direct assistance on the ground. So, big story, not getting nearly as much coverage as it should. And, people have to reject this. And I think that's where government loses. You can't get to the point where, bureaucracy is beyond comprehension, where it just gets so silly that you can't get people to support it any longer. Another big covered or non-covered story, a big covered up story, is what's happening in North Dakota. The governor now has declared a state of emergency and calling on SWAT teams and cops to squash Native American protests. And they're saying this because they need to save state money. So if you're not aware, 1,500 to 4,000 total protesters and growing by the moment are there to in North Dakota to they're right by Standing Rock Indian Reservation to protest the Dakota Access Pipeline. This is where the left completely, abandons the environmentalists and those that are standing up to climate change, regardless of this. It's completely rained out, covered by, a barrage of propaganda. And you would think this would be a huge story, a huge interest piece, especially to the left, and just scant mention. Only left organization that I've seen mention it. I think PBS NewsHour just briefly mentioned it, and you have Democracy Now! That talked about it in one of the news blurbs. But anyway, interesting how this protest turns into a full-scale show. So the government's saying, well, to keep you safe, to keep these people fed, to keep porta potties on site, to maintain, sanitary conditions, it's going to cost upwards of $100,000 to $1 million per month to provide these services for this protest. And, it was a big hit to the establishment because last week there were a lot of headlines about how the Dakota Nation had stalled the governor's plan. Jack, what's his name? It's Dalrymple. Sounds like a storybook character. That they had quashed this, this pipeline, and that's very empowering. Just like the Cajun Navy, it represents this, the will of the locals, will of the people that own property to stop something that's bigger than them. Government can't have that. So we'll see what the response is and how long these people can hang out. The Department of Homeland Security cut their water lines this week, according to several Native American news outlets and others covering the protest. So another big scandal, the EpiPen scandal. People are getting gouged for their jabs. If you don't know what an EpiPen is, you're probably not as concerned as people that are paying outrageous prices for these things. But the company that's gouging the EpiPen makers, the gougers, are Clinton Foundation donors and partners. And what's funny about that is because the Clinton News Network and the establishment press, the controlled corporate media, can't bear to do. They really want this to be about why we need single-payer healthcare systems. The crash of Obamacare will only through that failure will lead to more government regulations, more price controls, more price fixes for our insurance companies, or the Wall Street and those that invest in the U.S. healthcare system. So, but they can't talk about it. It's driving them nuts. All right, we'll wrap it up on the other side. More geopolitics and a few more thoughts. Stay right there. It's Blacklisted Radio. All right, welcome back. It's the final segment. Yeah, sometimes, trying to package some of these thoughts, some of these different segments into just a few minutes, you have to kind of weigh what you're going to talk about. So as we got through this last segment beforehand, I was trying to think about, what do I want to talk about? And I guess we should talk about what's happening in the Middle East briefly. And interesting development took place. We now have Turkey invading Syria alongside the United States of America. We have a soft no-fly zone being instituted. The U.S. has told Russia not to go in certain areas, some kind of veiled threats that kind of took place. But, of course, this brings up a really good question, and that is if the evil United States and the Fethullah Gulens that are being protected by the State Department, those type of people, are still in charge. And they were part of this coup d'etat that just took place, that justified rounding up estimations somewhere in the 65 to 75,000 person range, torture is taking place. You would think that maybe Erdogan, who has just made this huge commitment and has really shifted his allegiances, or seemingly allegiances towards Russia and China, making new deals, making I wouldn't say enemy of the United States and Europe, but definitely, playing the hand, playing the options that are afforded to Erdogan, looking at maybe, a backstop or some kind of security blanket if, like so many other people in power, like Bashar al-Assad, that he's not, blindsided or double-crossed by the United States, the Anglo faction of the New World Order, whatever you like to call it. So, but why would he be working with the U.S.? Well, it's all about strategic interests. And, one day you're the best friend of the United States, next day we're there alongside your enemies killing you. That is what the moderate Syrian and a lot of Kurds are finding out. So it's just really interesting to see this, because I think there was a lot of people that were all in that the U.S. Was completely part of this operation, and listening to even very, very well-connected, well-sourced journalists kind of, back and forth on what's really taking place. Are we seeing, a shift away from the EU, away from the United States, towards the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? Is this going to be a focal point? Now, the Saudi Arabians and the Israelis, they want Assad out. We had a report by Kurt Nimmo, who I should just mention is now a staff writer for Blacklisted News. Great piece, his very first piece on Blacklisted News, highlights a lot of this, and you should check it out. It's about, where's Hillary? Where's her? So focused on the alt-right. I put away here we go, my notes on Hillary. The title is Hillary Clinton's Humanitarian Interventionists Prepare for War in Syria. And these are the same people that were deeply embedded in the operation we know now as 9/11. And Kurt actually wrote for Alex Jones InfoWars for 10 years. And he was one of the first people I read back in, I'd say, early 2005, 2006. His website's Another Day in the Empire. And he's brought it back. And he's now writing for Blacklisted News. So we'll have exclusives from Kurt. We'll bring him on to talk about his book in the very near future. But I want to announce that here at the end of the show as well. But this piece is great, and it ties a lot of this together, what's happening in Turkey and Syria. And it's pretty interesting, this menage a trois of evil that's taking place. Guys, that's my time. I will be back next Sunday night for another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. Check out the podcast at blacklistedradio.com. Text me anytime, 512-222-3067, and take care.